So, in 2018, I bought the Curio figure Bandai America put out as part of Power Rangers Dino Charge's release. This purchase was made with the intent of replacing the cape with one made of fabric. But then it hit me. I had no idea what I was doing. And then I just forgot about it, as you do. Fast forward to December 2022, I decide to change that. While unfortunately, by that point, I had lost the cape, I did still have these patterns I took made out of masking tape, so I did have something to work with. I started with making a mock-up, and from this I realized that the bunting trim at the bottom of the Curio cape was going to be hard, as the seam allowance just wants to fill everything out, so these triangles end up looking more like subtle little bumps. So I knew to try something different with that detail. Unfortunately, I also lost this mock-up. I have no idea where it is. So I made a second one without any attempt at the bunting, and I was happy with it. Now, after a bit of back and forth experimenting with the proportions and measurements, I settled on this pattern. I did have to slightly alter the bottom of the cape in order to make the stripes synchronize with the overall shape of the cape in a way that matches what we saw on TV. Now, I'd like to point out, I bought 4 different sheets of fabric and 7 different spools of thread for this project. It was a little annoying, and there were times where I wasn't even sure if what I'd bought matched what we saw on TV. But my cat thought they were comfy, so if that's not an indication I made the right choice with my fabric colors, then I don't know what is. So I started out by appliquing the darker shades of green onto the base layer of fabric, and then backstitch embroidered the gold details on. The middle panel was a bit different, however. I started with applique, but on the costume there is a detail that's meant to make it look as though there's some top stitching going on, so I had to embroider some cross stitching in brown thread. And also, Curio has a diamond in the shin blade area of the cape, and that was really awkward to do because of the scale. I originally thought about just zigzag stitching around the diamond, but that didn't look right. So I just stitched 2 pieces of fabric together, and that did look better. And considering I had to embroider on some white thread anyway, I used that to double as a way of stitching the diamond onto the shin blade area of the cape. It doesn't look good. And then I, of course, did the backstitch gold embroidery detail. All of these panels individually were stitched at the sides to get that lime green lining you can see on Curio's cape where there is no detail. And while the top I left unstitched because of how it will connect with the scarf, the bottom of the panels I left unstitched so I could do those by hand, but do it in such a way that I could also attach the bunting trim. I put some fabric glue on the cream-colored fabric and then just applied it to the cape with an invisible ladder stitch. However, the middle panel was a bit harder because of the angle in the middle. My frustration got the best of me and I just attached that bit of fabric to the rest of the cape with fabric glue. For all 3 panels, I then used pinking shears to get that bunting effect. Now for Curio's scarf. Originally, there was going to be a bit of a curve, but at this scale, that was making things a bit difficult for me, so I settled on just one straight strip of fabric. On the show, Curio has white, purple, and orange stripes going across his scarf, and I achieved that look with embroidery, more backstitching to be exact, and then I hand-stitched a seam in place. That was a problem, as having the scarf already be somewhat complete meant it was harder to then attach the individual cape panels. So I had to undo that hand stitching, machine stitch on my cape panels, then machine stitch shut the rest of the scarf, and my plan was to finalize it with invisible ladder stitching. However, the cape kept kind of getting in the way, and Again, frustration got the best of me, so I just coated the back of the scarf in fabric glue, waited for it to dry, and then just cut off the excess. I then put Curio's head back on with the help of some boiling water, and the cape was done. Now, I don't know if you can tell, but I did not enjoy this. One problem with this project was that Curio's cape has a lot of detail on it, and I'm trying to recreate that for a toy that is 5 inches tall. It's a small surface area, there isn't a lot of room to work with. For example, there's a lot of brown top stitching on this cape that I ended up ignoring, partially because of the small surface area, and partially because my bunting idea doesn't really synchronize with what we saw on TV all that well. I get when you shrink a costume down to be a toy, there's a certain amount of impressionism going on, but this is just wrong. I'm also not happy with how much I relied on fabric glue to stop it from fraying, and I think I know how I could have avoided that. Now that I can look back on this in hindsight, I realize this is a problem I have performed before. I've tried to sew something with a sewing pattern that's better suited for a fully grown person to wear, but not properly reworked the sewing pattern for the new scale. For example, if I were to do this again, I would break the scarf up into individual pieces and have them be a part of the individual cape panels, and then just stitch them onto another strip of fabric. There's even a part of this project that I had to ignore. You see, the bunting, I did make a pattern for it. And if I had been more willing to just embrace top stitching, that detail could have been more accurate to what we saw on TV. But unfortunately, I tried to come at this as if I were making it for a person to wear, not a 5-inch tall action figure. So, yeah, not really a fan of this one. I mean, for any eagle-eyed viewers, you might have noticed I've already tried to customize this with some paint on one of the arms and the bells, but Curio has a lot of detail. So, I suppose on a positive, when I make this again, I'll be able to get the details more accurately represented in my impression. And hey, I may not like this project, but maybe you did. And if you did like it, feel free to immortalize it by hitting the like button and sharing it with your friends, or maybe even subscribing to my YouTube channel. Maybe even see me in the next video. Bye!